And um, all right, well, according to my clock, it is 11 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and welcome to our webinar on the American Rescue Plan and Ideas for Rising Stronger Together, presented by the Wyoming Business Council. I'm Amy Quick, Strategic Communications for the Business Council, and I will be the facilitator today. I'd like to start by covering a few quick housekeeping reminders before I hand you over to Josh. Due to the short time available today, we will not be answering live questions during the webinar. However, we invite you to submit your written questions and any ideas using the Q&A function on the webinar toolbar. We will save this input and be sure to include it in our recommendation to policymakers as they look at crafting programs to leverage the American Rescue Plan funds coming to Wyoming. Please do not submit questions or comments using the webinar chat box as we can't track those. You can also go to the web address listed in the chat function to complete our brief survey, which we will discuss in more detail throughout the webinar. I'll remind everyone to please keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking, and please keep background noise to a minimum. We are recording this webinar and we'll make the recording available at wyobizrelief.org/ARP2021 and on our social channels in the coming days. With all of that out of the way, I will turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Josh Durrell, to get started and share what we've got going on. Josh?
Well, thanks, Amy. I really appreciate that intro. And I also appreciate everyone remembering too that we definitely want to see those ideas. And so making sure that you utilize that, the website to do so will be great. Thanks again. You know, as we look through 2020 last year and thought about all of the challenges that many of us faced, and we are still facing them in a lot of ways. But Wyoming communities are not, this isn't new. Wyoming communities have always faced challenges. I think we've always looked for opportunities to get through them. And this is no different. So one of the things that we really want to make sure that we continue to do is turn those challenges into opportunities. And really, you know, I'll give you a sneak peek at the call to action today. It's really about thinking big. And it's really about saying, okay, we have these moments in time that are difficult for us and that are challenging, but how do we make sure that those moments don't happen again and again? Because we will continue to face times that are great and times that are tough throughout our history and throughout our future. And that's just part of living in a community. And so we want to challenge everyone to think about the ways that we can fix these into the future as well as just today's, solving today's problems. So with that, I want to take a quick moment and talk a little bit about some of the funding that is coming our way and what that means. And really it is all about the communities in America and the families of America and how we're going to help you know, really hopefully create more resilient communities and resilient families and people that can deal with the challenges that are coming at us and will continue to do so. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each of these elements because what I want folks to understand is that while there is money coming our way in many different areas, I want us to start to think about, regardless of the funding source of how we solve those problems, what are the problems that we need to solve and how can we solve them? Sometimes money can help solve a problem, but really it's the work that we take on before the actual funding event that makes a bigger difference. And so with that, while there is a lot of money in a lot of different ways coming at us, I want us to think about the problems that we can solve, how we can solve them best, and what can we do to create new opportunities in Wyoming. And again, if you're on this webinar, chances are really good you're a leader. Now, you may not have leader as a part of your title. You may not have leader as a part of your, what you might call your day job, but it's clear that if you're here, you are a leader in your community. You're a leader of your family. You're a leader of a business. you are a leader, and we want to really draw upon all of the leaders across the state and think about those new opportunities that we can create, not just with this money, but at this time with this driver to create what Wyoming will look like in the future. And so, as somebody who is fairly new to the Business Council and definitely new to this area of the world, so to speak, we look at the different ways of solving problems with really three different levers. And we've talked a little bit about funding, and that's important. But I also want us to start to realize that one of the things and the biggest tools that we have in our toolkit is really that policy and regulatory environment. And the Wyoming Business Council wants to work with community leaders, legislators, obviously the governor's office, and really think about how do we create policies that make it easier for businesses and communities to thrive. And so as we are going through this process, and as you are thinking about, oh, well, maybe there's a project here or some funding would be great here, I also want you to think about the policy and regulatory environment that you have as a business leader, and think about how if it were to change for the better, what would that look like? Because that can be a major growth accelerator or a growth inhibitor, depending on what it is. And so really looking at that policy and what the regulatory environment is a key component of this. And of course, then the next piece is leadership within your communities and communicating all of the great programs that we have across the state, or you might have in your communities, and making sure that you're continuing to be a leader. It's also something that's important to us to be that leader for the state and to make a difference throughout the entire state. And so if there are things that we need to do from a leadership perspective or communications perspective, we want to hear about that too, because that is really important. And it's one of the tools that we have to make a difference in Wyoming. Now, as you're thinking about the challenges that your family, your business, your community, the state faces, I want you to realize a few of the elements that we need to think about as it comes to how do we solve these problems. And here are a few tips that we feel like can make a big difference as you're thinking about this. First things first, it turns out that all of us wear multiple hats. And all of us do different things. And I want you to not just think of yourself as a civic leader and what would you do, but I also want you to put yourself in the shoes of your everyday life. Maybe you're a mother or a father to some kids. Maybe you coach a team. Maybe you lead a team at work. Maybe you are, somebody who works closely with the government or is in the government. Put all of those different hats on and think about the impact that programs can have on you and the things that you need to have to happen so that you can do your job or whichever hat you're wearing better. We are okay with you being really, really high level or you being way down in the weeds with these ideas. Sometimes it takes both. And some people are much more comfortable in the weeds than they are way up in the clouds. And that's okay. We're not going to throw one out because it's too detailed or throw one out because it's too high level. We want to look at all of those different things. We also want you to think about it and come at it from well, I think there's a problem here, but why is that a problem? How can I understand this problem a little bit better before saying here's a potential solution for it? In terms of, you've seen it in action here today, eloquence is not required. We can speak plainly and freely, and as you're submitting these ideas, please do so in a way to not feel like it has to be 100% polished. Please do it in a way that makes sense to you. If we need more clarification, if we need to try to understand it more, we obviously will, because it's more important for us to get those ideas out and get them moving forward. And it leads into that last item, which is we want to build better ideas together. I'm confident that we will get many different ideas from many different angles, and some of them will be solving the same problem. And I think we can put things together in order to make a big difference and make these ideas much better. And so we want to build those things together. So there's not going to be one silver bullet. Likely there are going to be many, many different things that come together to make those ideas work. Here are some of what I would consider questions that might help your brainstorming or might help you frame up the problems that you're solving. And, you know, I can kind of read through these and we can talk about them a little bit, but these are ideas that are really just ways of getting the creative juices flowing, I guess. And so thinking about the economy in the next few months is sometimes the top of mind for us as business owners or as community members, is like, what's going to happen in the next paycheck? What's going to happen with my next payroll? What's going to happen at the end of the summer? Those are things that are important to us, and no doubt about it. But I also want to encourage us to have that longer term vision and think about how we can make a difference, not just today, but in 2040, in a town that our children and our grandchildren are going to live in. And how do we do that? And so what are the things that we can do to protect ourselves or to grow and make sure that we are doing the right things out into 2040, not just in the moment? And then I also want you to step back and if you're like me and it's been a few years since you've been maybe in college or in high school, and step back into that moment and think about, what are the opportunities that exist for them? What are the opportunities that as you graduated from high school or from college in Wyoming that make you feel like, hey, I could stay here? And how do we create those opportunities so that we can keep our families here if they so choose? You know, one of the biggest things that happens in economic development is that people think about, well, we really want to do this project or that project. And we think, okay, well, what are the competitive advantages of that project? What are the competitive advantages of your community and as our state as a whole? Now, I'll use a quick example. Some people see our small size in terms of population as a disadvantage. Some people think, oh, well, you don't have the concentration of people required to do certain things. But I think we could flip that on its head and say, actually, that is a huge competitive advantage. We've seen it happen in the way we can legislate and the way we can create laws that make a big difference. I think that our blockchain and banking laws have been the darling of the financial community for the last few years. And that's happened because we have a small size, we have a citizen legislature, and we have a way to make things happen quickly. So that takes our small size and leverages it. Now, so thinking about Wyoming and what makes it special, how do we capitalize on those competitive advantages? One of the things that happens in every case in economic development are those, gosh, we should have done that. If we had only done that, this would have happened. Well, those happen from time to time. Those happen over the course of history. What are those things? And either what can we learn from them or what can we dust off and try again? Because it might be a better time now. It might make more sense. And if we don't do those now, in 2040, the people who are in our roles now are going to look back and go, gosh, they really missed the boat on that. And we don't want to be in that situation. So if there are some ideas that from our past that we maybe didn't take advantage of, let's think about those and how do we reenact them and reshape them for today. This is something that might take a little bit of a description. It's that whole idea of how do we create an and economy. So often we think about the word transition and we think, oh, well, we're going to have to go away from one thing or to do something else. And it becomes an or economy, right? And there's this question of, do we care about this or that? And what I'm wondering is there a way to create an and economy? How do we do that so it's this and that? When we really think about it, one of the challenges that we have in a lot of Wyoming communities is our resilience. And that is our ability to recover when one industry segment has a tough time. And in many economies, in many of our community economies in the state, we have a single industry that controls that economy. What we want to create are multiple industries that impact that economy so that as one may suffer or go into a bit of a downturn, other ones can support that community and move it forward. So we need to create that and economy. So thinking about, natural resources and tourism, agriculture and tourism, agriculture and natural resources in some of the big ones in Wyoming, that's a great way to think about it. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both or all three or more. And so thinking about that is really important to us. And then Finally, the other thing is that sometimes we don't know the answer. And in economic development, the time scale is really, really long. And so what we have to be careful about is thinking, oh, we've got to make this huge bet right now to do it. In some cases, that might work, and swinging for the fence is a good idea. But in other cases, what we might want to do is run some experiments that get us a little further down the road, help us see the problem more clearly, and help inform the next steps so that we can build the right things. And so if there are experiments that we can run to test our ideas, this is a great opportunity to do that. So finally, what we really want to think about are these questions here, right? If you had a blank check, what would you do? What opportunities should we be thinking about? And what are the current challenges and opportunities that your community might be facing or seeing that you want to take advantage of? And so we want to really think about these two simple, very simple questions so that we can understand what problems we might want to solve, not just with the funding that might be coming our way, but also with the policies that we can create to make things easier. And we think that taking a hard look at these two questions and putting our thoughts to them can make a really, really big difference in the state of Wyoming. And that's why we're inviting you to share your big ideas at the website that's listed there, wyobizrelief.org. /ARP 2021, ARP 2021, or you can even scan that QR code. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy Quick. We really want your ideas. Thank you as much as possible. We want you to be thinking big and bold, and turn it over to Amy Quick for any closing housekeeping.
Thanks, Josh. And I also want to welcome, we have Director Robin Cooley with the Department of Workforce Services, who is able to join us. So good morning, Director Cooley. And just to give you some opportunities to share, because we do know this is a joint effort by multiple agencies working with the governor's office and legislators to try to, leverage these funds and to think of these big ideas. So I'll turn that over to you for a bit as well.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. And thanks, Josh. Josh, great presentation. I think you covered all the areas. I think the only thing that I would want to wrap up with saying is asking everyone to recognize that this really is a 3+ year project. So as we're trying to, as the group, the task force that's trying to put this plan in place to propose to the governor, as we're trying to do this, there's ideas coming in from every corner of the state, and that's how it should be. That's wonderful, because that's when we really get the big, the bold, and the really grand ideas that are going to make a difference for Wyoming's future. But please recognize that what we need to do now is start with the short term, with what are going to be some very impactful plans, projects, and ideas that will help us move out of COVID and get back on track to where we were. But then also, what are those grand ideas that are going to push Wyoming into the future and are going to really be for our kids, and that will keep them here in Wyoming. So this is a 3+ year project. So keep those ideas coming. We don't have to have all the answers now. We can really think short term now to get us back on track, but really then think grand and think big, and keep the ideas coming, because this is going to be an iterative planning project over the next 3+ years. So I would just encourage you, keep thinking about it, keep talking to members of your community and your industry, and keep the ideas coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. And I think that's a really great point about the time frame that we're working with. And again, some of these may not fit the current funding model, and that's okay, right? Because there might be other funding opportunities. There might be money that the state can utilize. There might be policy changes. And so again, if we can focus in on those challenges that we're facing within our communities and focus in on the opportunities that those might bring, I think that's going to be the first big key. And so, you know, having that, having the thinking going on, and while we have what I would call a really strong impetus for making this happen right now, I think this is how we all need to be thinking all the time, is looking further out there and making sure to always look at the big picture. So that's a really good point. What we would like to do now is just encourage you to make sure that you, and Amy, maybe we can jump to that slide with the QR code and the website, and just encourage you to take some time and think about those questions, and make sure that you have some time to fill that form out and provide us that information. Amy, anything else that we need to cover from a housekeeping perspective before we sign off today?
I think that's pretty much it. You know, thank you both, Director Cooley and Josh, for joining us today, and for everybody being on with us. We really did just want to kind of prime the pump and get people thinking about those big ideas, because this is a great opportunity to share our input and to get that feedback from across the state and from all sorts of different walks of life and business. So please do go check out the website, the survey. We will post this recording on the website as well, so you can share it with your friends, your neighbors, your family, your coworkers, so that they all understand what we're trying to do at the state level to share these ideas and really leverage them to invest in our future. So thank you again, and we wish you all a great day.
Thanks. Bye.